Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled Planet X, Planetary Alignments and Earthquakes. Now, at the moment, most of the planets in the solar system are on the same side of the Sun, which has resulted in several planets appearing to be very close together from the Earth's surface. This has led to reports that this alignment may lead to increased seismic, in other words, earthquake, and volcanic activity. Now, the Earth is already experiencing unprecedented volcanic activity, which is most clearly seen through the unending eruption in Hawaii. The Hawaiian eruption is bringing ever faster flowing and therefore hotter magma to the surface, which must therefore come from deeper within the Earth, suggesting that an open path has developed between the surface and Earth's liquid layer within it. This eruption started on May 3rd of 2018 and thus too soon to have been caused by the alignment. However, is it possible that a planetary alignment will further worsen the situation on Earth so that stronger seismic activity becomes possible? So this is the subject of this article. And here we see the planet's positions on July 23rd, 2018. You can see that Mars is very close to Earth. In fact, Earth is in alignment between the Sun and Mars. But Saturn and Jupiter are also quite close, so it's possible that, we will consider whether they will have an effect or not. Now, if we look back in history, we do find that some of the largest earthquakes have occurred during some kind of planetary alignment. For example, on November 4th, 1952, a 9-magnitude earthquake occurred in Russia. At that time, the Earth was aligned with the Sun and Jupiter. There were no other alignments and no other planets were at the closest position to Earth. And you can see this was the position, this Earth between the Sun and Jupiter. So Jupiter was at its closest position to Earth. However, the Earth will pass between the Sun and Jupiter about once per year. And at the time of the next alignment, which was December 4th, 1953, there was no earthquake, although a magnitude 7.5 occurred in Peru on December 12, 1953. And that would be 8 days later. So it's possible that was connected with that alignment. And this is the position here. So this was on December 4th, 1953. Again, Earth in alignment with Jupiter and the Sun. Then the next one was on January 14th, 1955. And there was no earthquakes on that day or in that month. So this is the position on January 14th, 1955, Earth here, between the Sun and Jupiter. And in fact, there were no earthquakes in that month. And the next one to occur was a 7.4 on March 31st, 1955. So quite a long time after the alignment. And here is the position of the planets on March 31st, 1955. Here's Earth. As you can see, none of the planets are in alignment with the Earth and the Sun. But we do see that the Earth seems to be between Saturn and Jupiter. So we could ask, is it possible that these planets exert a strong enough force on the Earth in opposition to the Sun's force to cause stress on the crust, which then leads to an earthquake? So for that, we need to calculate the actual forces. So we know from what we've seen that Earth being between the Sun and Jupiter does not necessarily lead to earthquakes. But are earthquakes more likely to occur during times of alignment? And can planets exert a strong enough force to deform the Earth's crust and cause an earthquake? Now, the next thing I have here is that a 9-magnitude earthquake occurred on March 11, 2011. And at that time, the Earth was not between the Sun and any other planet. The only alignment the Earth was in at the time was with Mercury and Jupiter. But Jupiter was not close to the Earth, and since the Sun was not part of the alignment, it's unlikely that the forces exerted by these planets could be strong enough to produce an earthquake. So Earth was not in alignment between the Earth and Saturn. Saturn was not that close to Earth. Saturn is much further out than Jupiter. Jupiter's on the other side of the solar system. Mercury was, I suppose, closer, but still on the other side of the Sun, so not likely to exert a strong force on the Earth. And without the Sun being part of any alignment, there's nothing. We cannot say that the Earth is between a flux transfer of magnetic field or particles between the Sun and another planet. So that couldn't be it. So this means that, well, we will next look, but from this it looks like that large earthquakes can occur even though there is no alignment. So it again shows no association between alignments and earthquakes. But to look at the forces, we will look at Newton's universal law of gravitation. This is the equation, and it's constant for all the objects in the solar system that belong to the solar system. The ones that come from outside, G will be different, and also G changes with energy, but it would still be the same for all the objects in the solar system, even if it's less than before. So it doesn't matter because we're going to use a ratio, so G will cancel anyway. ME here is the mass of the Earth. MOB means mass of the object, so that's the mass of the object that is exerting the force on the Earth, and REOB is the distance between the Earth and the object. And the parameters are given here for mass in terms of 10 to the 22 kilograms. So the mass of the Sun is 2 times 10 to the 8 times 10 to the 22 or times 10 to the 30 overall kilograms. And here it is for the rest of the objects that we're considering: the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. And here are the orbital parameters, actually just the orbital radius in terms of times 10 to the 6 or million kilometers. So Earth is 150 million kilometers. This is for the Moon, but it's with respect to the Earth, whilst all the planets is with respect with the Sun, because the planets orbit the Sun, the Moon orbits the Earth. And then here in terms of astronomical units, and one astronomical unit is the distance between the Earth and the Sun, so it's 150 million kilometers, or in miles it would be 93 million miles. And then the closest distance to Earth is calculating, and this is in terms of AU, taking the orbital radius for the Earth and subtracting the orbital radius of the other objects. So for example, Mercury has an orbital radius of 0.39 AU, so its closest distance to Earth is 1 minus 0.39, so that's 0.61. And then we calculate the ratio of the force exerted by Jupiter with respect to the force exerted by the Sun, so that's the ratio of these two equations. You see that the G and the ME cancels, and we end up with mass of Jupiter divided by mass of the Sun times the distance between the Earth and the Sun squared divided by the distance between Earth and Jupiter squared. And we assuming that all the objects are at the closest position to Earth, so they would exert the strongest possible force here. And then substituting for the masses and the distances, and these are in terms of AU, we get 5.4 times 10 to the minus 5. And that is basically a decimal point, 4 zeros and a 5. Very, very small. So Jupiter exerts a tiny, tiny fraction of the force that the Sun exerts on the Earth. And in terms of percentage, that's 0.005% of the force that the Sun exerts. And then I calculated it for each of the objects, and you can see that when it's done for the Moon, it's the second strongest after the Sun. It's 0.005, so only 2 zeros here, and all the others, including Jupiter, is the 4 zeros and a 5. Venus is 4 zeros and a 2. So that's not as strong as Jupiter, but close, about half. And that is because Venus is much closer to Earth than Jupiter is, even though Jupiter is much more massive. Now, the fact that the moon exerts a much stronger force than any of the other planets, so it's 0.005, all the others exert a much weaker force, would suggest that the time to watch for alignment-related earthquakes is when the moon and the sun are aligned, which is also the time when the Earth will experience higher tides. However, there is no evidence that a correlation exists. Susan Howe, a seismologist, looked at earthquake data from as far back as 1600 and found no correlation whatsoever between moon phases and the incidence of earthquakes. Well, we could consider then that perhaps the effect is electrical, that perhaps the Earth passing through a magnetic flux connection between the Sun and the planets may lead to increased earthquake activity. But then we would see strong earthquake activity each time Earth passes between the Sun and Jupiter, and this is clearly not happening, as we saw from the earthquake activity in 1952, 1953, and 1955. Thus, we have to conclude that even though cataclysmic earthquakes sometimes happen during planetary alignments, there is no conclusive evidence that planetary alignments lead to increased seismic activity. However, the Planet X system of stellar cores, which have been shown to have invaded the solar system, see Article 116, entitled Planet X Objects, Unbelievable Evidence in Size, and are usually observed in the Sun's corona and have also been shown to be affecting the Earth. And for that, you may look at Article 243, entitled Earth Hosting at least 3 Planet X system objects, seem to be able to induce seismic and volcanic activity. So the stellar cores seem to induce seismic and volcanic activity. These objects draw energy from their host bodies, and thus they draw energy from the Earth. And this lowers Earth's gravitational influence, which then causes the Earth to expand and therefore fissure, which will also lead to increased earthquake activity and unprecedented volcanic activity, as the fissures, since they will occur at all depths where the crust is solid, will provide channels for the huge amount of magma inside the Earth to find its way to the surface. And you may look at Article 182, entitled Earth in Upheaval, Magma Rising from Beneath, where all this is explained. Now, in addition, because these objects absorb energy, they cause the Earth to heat up from the core and the ionosphere to become more charged. This, in turn, would induce electric currents inside the Earth, which would then also lead to earthquake activity. And you may look at Article 38, entitled The Electrical Nature of Earthquakes, which shows that electric currents in the ionosphere are likely to lead to earthquakes because they are electrical in nature. And they all are like, or some of the earthquakes, I wouldn't say all of them, but earthquakes can be as a result of discharges inside the Earth. Electrical discharges. And now this illustrates what happens when a stellar core connects with a solar system object, be it the sun or the planets. The fact that the object is low in energy, it's like being cold, and the sun would be hot because it has a lot of energy. So it makes a matter connection, and then energy is drawn from the hot to the cold because heat always flows from a hot object to a cold object. So that means that all the surfaces in this hot object heat up as energy flows outward. So the surface would heat up. It would be hotter, more energetic, a strong electric field, more ionization, more radiation emitted. In the case of the sun, the chance of solar flares, as I've written about. In case of the Earth, it greatly ionizes the Earth's ionosphere, and even the atmosphere. Radiation will be given off. The ionosphere will have more currents, And these currents will induce currents inside the Earth, which may then lead to earthquakes. And here is the eruption ongoing on that Hawaiian island. And we see large rivers of lava, and the lava is flowing ever faster, indicating that it's ever hotter and coming from ever deeper within the Earth. And this eruption is unending. It's likely never to end, because as long as the Earth keeps heating up because of the stellar cores, and because there is so much magma inside the Earth, it's an astonishing amount of magma. Basically, we are then seeing the magma come to the surface, and it will keep coming. So here is one of the stellar cores that are obviously being hosted by the Earth. This one was seen in the sky for many hours. The only way that's possible is if it had made a connection with the Earth and was thus rotating with the Earth, because otherwise any object outside and not connected with the Earth will seem to move in the sky because of the Earth's rotation. So this was discovered by GFP in March of 2018. Not the sky, I think he'd seen this object before. This time it looked black, it looked red, other times it looks black, but it's obviously emitting red light. It's got a dispersed cloud of material around it, also emitting red light. That means there's ionization, there's energy absorption that leads to radiation being emitted by the object. But even though there is no evidence that planetary alignments lead to earthquakes, there may still be a role that planetary alignments have in inducing earthquakes. And this is that it's possible that stellar cores, energy bound to solar system planets, can hop from one planet to another whenever these planets approach each other. Thus, when planets come close to Earth, the stellar cores orbiting them may hop to the Earth, and we may then see increased earthquake and volcanic activity. But this will not necessarily happen every time, which is why there is no conclusive evidence to suggest a connection between alignments and increased seismic activity. There is evidence that stellar core matter started affecting the Earth in 1850. So these objects may have been inducing earthquake and volcanic activity for a very long time. In conclusion, the presence of the Planet X system of stellar cores inside the solar system seems to be the root cause for the increasing incidence and strength of cataclysmic events on the Earth. Planetary alignments only seem to fit into the picture as possible opportunities for the objects of the stellar cores to hop from another planet to the Earth. And here are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.